You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
That's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to a very special episode of Making Tracks. We were invited to be a part of a Bad Batch Roundtable, which gave us the chance to talk to producer and head writer Jennifer Corbett and producer Brad Rau, as well as Fennec and herself, Ming-Na Wen. So let's not hang around, let's get straight into it. Here's our Bad Batch Roundtable with Brad Rau and Jennifer Corbett ahead of today's 9th episode of Season 1 of the Bad Batch, Bounty Lost. To kick off, Richard and Sarah from Skywalker of Neverland had a question, and Richard's question was, why is Bolo in the Bad Batch called Bolo and not Hammerhead?
That's a great question, and we love Bolo, voiced by the great Liam O'Brien, and when he got to see the design for his character, he said, Hammerhead in the Kinner style. And we're like, yes, Liam, that's correct. That's what we're going for. So yeah, that's intentional. But actually the original Hammerhead, I believe his name was Moma Nadon. It's not actually Hammerhead. So it's more of everybody's got their own name. His name's Bolo. Corbett?
I mean, it's more about the dysfunctional friendship between Bolo and Ketch, right. That really spawned that name. But they're always getting into trouble, and they're fun. They're fun characters to have in SIDS.
Next up, John and Marie had a question, and she asked, Crosshair, was there ever a discussion regarding him following the Empire by choice, or was there ever another clone thought about for that role?
It's a really good question. Early on in the development process, we knew that Crosshair was going to be the one who would sort of be the foil to this group and be our main antagonist. But, you bring up a good point, because one of the things we always try to talk about with this series and when the Bad Batch are dealing with the regs is that question of choice. Because with the chips, they didn't really have a say. They're conditioned to follow orders, and with Order 66, we see them execute that without hesitation. So, what the regs are going through and what Crosshair is going through is something we continue to explore throughout the season. So we don't want to give too much away, but the discussion of choice is a big topic.
Next up was Teresa Delgado with a question asking if the similarity between the Bad Batch and the Mandalorian in regards to the father figure and the genetic material was a coincidence, or whether it was something that was done on purpose.
Really for us, there are some similarities for sure that roll over. The idea of a found family, especially with grizzled warriors, sort of having parenthood forced upon them and then learning how to deal with that for good and for bad is just it's just a classic storyline that when we were looking at the Bad Batch, it made sense to go that way really quickly. Not intentional as a symmetrical nod to the Mandalorian necessarily, more so just to create interesting point of view that could get the audience into the series, where you might not always identify as a super soldier or as a clone, but as a family, as a big brother, as a little sister, whatever it might be. It seemed like a natural way to get into this show.
And I think, to ground it in real life, when you see different families on the surface, they all may seem similar or, have similarities, but really when you get into their dynamic and what they're going through, that's where you see the different shades. So I think that's kind of true with Star Wars as well.
Next up, it was time for a question from me.
Hi, everyone. As much as the focus is on the characters of Clone Wars 99 in the show, there seems to be an equal focus on the era and the world building in that post-Order 66 time. Was that always a key element to show us the galaxy, the state of the galaxy, as much as the characters within it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and it's something that we're really excited about in this era that hasn't been really explored in the Star Wars timeline. Is there's so many things going on. There's so much change. There's like a kind of Wild West sensibility, and yet the rise of the Empire. How does that look are things that get us really excited for the stories that these characters go into. 100%.
Especially because like the change in the environment is what starts the show and starts the change in the galaxy. So it's been fun to get to explore that from the Batch's perspective compared to, the Regs and Crosshair's perspective with the Empire.
Next question was from Brian Young, who asked regarding the story group and overlaps with other shows, how much does the story group, inverted commas, keep them honest?
Very. They keep us very honest. Because, as Brad said, with this timeline, and we have a bit of wiggle room before we start getting into, Rebels and even Solo and A New Hope, there's an opportunity for us to explore lots of things. But anytime we have a story discussion or an episodic discussion, the story team weighs in on things that could potentially be an issue or things that could potentially be a tie-in. And if it makes sense creatively, that's something we discuss and talk about. But, we're never really confined by things. It's just if we like to shoot for the stars and if it gets into a certain area we have to be careful about, then we just, we have a longer discussion on what we're trying to accomplish and if it can fit with anything else.
And there's also, kind of going off of that, in this era, there are a lot of different characters sort of bumping around. So anytime we can maybe see one or two of them in our show, we're just super excited about that.
Hi, this is John Morton from The Empire Strikes Back, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
James Bainey from Star Wars News there had a fascinating question. He asked whether Omega, given that she is revealed to be from the original DNA of Jango Fett, making her essentially Boba Fett's sister, whether that will change things and how they play out over the years to come.
Loaded question, James. Yeah, I mean, that's all very, very exciting. There's definitely mystery that we won't go into too much today, but we've just had a lot of fun playing the mystery up, to be honest, just to see that there's something to this kid. And you see something that makes me excited is when we can show this kid, whoever it is, wherever she's from, whatever her deal is, when you see her training alongside these other guys and failing, honestly, sometimes, and then seeing her overcome that, to me, that's the most exciting part of her character more than anything else. But there are other parts of her story to tell that we will be excited for you guys to see in the future.
And
Sure.
to add on that, there's a lot about, different people's agendas and what the Empire's interested in versus what the Kaminoans are interested in. And even along that, Nalase versus Lama Su. But when it comes to the Bad Batch, their take on Omega, pretty much they don't care what she is or what she isn't, which is what that sort of family dynamic is. While others may be interested in her for a different reason, they're just more about, she's one of us. We're a team unit, and we're going to train her as best we can. And this is our squad now.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
George Bate from Star Wars Holocron asked, given that the show is essentially an ensemble piece, which of the characters do Brad and Jennifer enjoy dealing with the most?
I mean, I'll dive in there. I love Sid. Sid is so good. Because she gives everybody equal amount of guff, and it's just delightful. And Rhea Perlman is such an outstanding actress. It's been fun seeing how her voice, when we first started recording her, affected some of the future scripts, some of the way that Sid would talk. And then when our animation and lighting department started bringing Sid to life, it's just this awesome character. It's exactly the kind of character that I love as a Star Wars fan. So yeah, she's a blast.
I personally loved Cad Bane, just being a massive Clone Wars fan, and him being so terrifying to watch on screen and intimidating. Having the chance to just see how he interacts with the Batch compared to a different bounty hunter, and what's changed for him in his life since we last saw him. And so he was fun to bring back.
Thanks so much.
James Burns from Jedi News had a question. He asked, regarding Star Wars Resistance, of the older characters in that show, which would Brad and Jennifer like to see come into the Bad Batch time frame?
Ooh, that might be too loaded of a question, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, Resistance was, I'll just say Resistance was an awesome show with this amazing cast of characters, and you know, our crew working on the show primarily is the same crew, both here at Lucasfilm and overseas as well. And it's interesting how that show and the production of that show has affected what we do as we continue to push forward in the animation process. As far as specific characters, I mean, I'm not going to go into too many details. There is definitely a long amount of time from where we are to where Resistance was. But it's an interesting question.
A really great question from William Devereaux over at Iron Cannon. He asks, to describe the second half of the first season of The Bad Batch, could they use just 2 words to tell us what's coming?
2 words?
Hold on.
There you go. That's so funny because I was going to say buckle up. So.
Yeah. You're really limiting us with the 2 words.
Yeah, that's
5 words too, but I figure, don't want to give away too much.
No, we're having so much fun, and it's been great to see, the fan reactions, all your reaction to how this show is coming out. I'll say, if you like where we've gone, I think you're going to really like where we're going.
How many words was that?
That was like 52 words.
Thanks.
Next up was Dan Z from Coffee with Kenobi, and his question was asking regarding Cad Bane and the evolution of bringing him back into the show.
Yeah, we in talking about the first half of the season, and obviously the Kaminoans put this bounty to have Omega return to them, and we knew we wanted to have the Batch interact with Fennec Shan just to see how they end up. Because they're still not fully street smart yet. They're still very much soldiers. They don't really know how the galaxy works in different ways. And while Fennec is new to the scene, she's still very dangerous. And to sort of compare that interaction with then later on when the Kaminoans hire an even bigger gun, and just a completely different experience for the Batch, where Hunter was able to get away that first time, but this time no one is going to outdraw Cad Bane. So it's kind of like just a continuation of who this squad's interacting with, and how each interaction, each experience, they're learning something new about other threats that are out there in the world, and how that affects them moving forward.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll say Corey Burton, he's such an amazing, fantastic, decorated actor. We have such a blast working with him. Kind of full stop on that, but also for the design of Cad Bane, we were looking at some designs that had never fully gone into production that were in progress in Clone Wars, both for his look and also for his ship that you see in 109. And it was a lot of fun to go back to those and sort of take them out of the garage and tinker with it and push it and rework it a little bit so that Cad Bane and his ride felt familiar and yet a little bit more nuanced, a little more detailed. But yeah, Corey, his performance just informs all of the animation and a lot of the blocking. He's phenomenal. He's so great.
Next, Michael Cohen praised the writing and asked, what's the key to a successful writer's room?
It's definitely all about collaboration. And, it's great to bring in so many excited writers who love Star Wars and who are just want to play in that sandbox, and the enthusiasm they bring. And then from story breaking on through the whole script stage and then production, we work closely with each freelancer, and then with Brad and his team, just to each step along the way, fine tuning, adding, giving it that extra Star Wars zhuzh to really kind of make the episodes pop. And if I could say anything, it's collaboration. And I owe a lot of that to Brad and the production side, because we give them stuff written on a page, but then seeing how they execute it, it's like they take it from here to here. And each time I'm amazed with every script.
I'm going to swing that right back to you, Corbett, that you are the best. I mean, really, this collaboration that we have is unlike any other show I've ever worked on, because truly when these amazing scripts, and they are amazing, and they've gone through so many stages, there's so much love and blood, sweat, and tears on each page. You could just feel it. But once we launch into our story phase and into animation and lighting and all the way to the end, we're we're constantly talking, we're constantly reworking things and making sure they line up. And so it's that part of the collaboration is really great. And not every show is like that. I think it's one of the special things about Lucasfilm Animation.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, Star Wars fan, Fantha Tracks fan.
David from Endor Express asked Brad and Jennifer to talk regarding the writing of the formation of the Empire and how they've worked that into the show.
It's fun to see it through their eyes because, like we've said before, it's the Batch is a military unit, and they're not used to having to think about anything political or anything beyond that. They're used to getting missions. They go on their missions, they execute them, and then they get new orders. But now that everything has shifted, they've now started to have to ask questions about the Empire, and they're unsure about where they fit in and where they're going. And as a writer, it's fun to sort of explore that turmoil in the galaxy, because there is so much that Batch doesn't know, as we as a viewer having seen what's about to happen. So there's that impending sense of like, oh, they don't really know what they're in for. But it's still about just like the daily struggles of once one government falls and a new regime rises, just sort of how some planets are happy about it because that means there's peace, but they don't realize what kind of peace that is. And it's definitely this storyline and that idea is something that will continue to evolve with the series.
Yeah, and it's also been interesting just from a design standpoint to take things that are very much Republic, like the Regs and their armor and their equipment, and make it all devoid of the interesting individual color. And now they're the face of the bad guy. And we did a lot of work to change the way that the futz works out of their helmet, so they sound almost a little bit less like good guys. It's still D. Bradley Baker performing 1,000 characters. He's so amazing. He's so great. Not only as all the bad men, but all of the Regs and anybody you see who's a clone. He's incredible. But if you look really closely, without going too much into detail about it, referencing our second episode on Seleucami, when the Bad Batch make their escape out of the old Western town, there's a lot of shooting going on. But we were very careful that when Hunter is shooting a clone, he shoots a clone in the arm, knocks a blaster out of his hand, shoots him in the leg, knocks him down, maybe punches him out. But none of those guys perished. And that's all very, very intentional. And that's all part of how, just a small look at how our main characters are dealing with this changing empire and seeing their brothers now as the face of the bad guy, not just Crosshair, but all of the Regs. And so it's all just interesting, juicy, meaty stuff to get into. And we don't always speak to it, but we try to pack it into every shot, into every frame.
Because it is like the most heartbreaking part, as if you were fans of the Clone Wars and just the prequels, and you got to know these clones and their relationships with the Jedi and how they were, a team, and then all of a sudden now they're part of the entity of the bad guy, and just how striking that is, even in the pilot episode when they're their armor is just bleached white and they're just kind of this evil side of things. And it's as a fan it's heartbreaking, but part of the show.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
After we finished talking with Brad Rau and Jennifer Corbett, we took a small break and then came back and were joined by Ming-Na Wen, who spoke all about Fennec Shand. John Murray asked, what background did the writers or Ming-Na herself create for Fennec to inform her performance?
Well, it's kind of difficult for me to talk about that because the stuff that Dave Filoni and I and the writers of The Bad Batch discussed about what young Fennec Shand would be like and why she became a bounty hunter. I mean, we collaborated and we threw out a lot of ideas out at each other. So I don't know what will stick and what won't. So I'm worried that if I reveal something from that conversation that hasn't been explored yet or brought to life in the animation or in future episodes, either, down the line in other venues. So I can't discuss that. I wish I could. Yeah.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Sarah from Skywalking Through Neverland asked, given that Fennec is based on a fox, the name is based on a fox, is Ming-Na bringing any foxy attributes to her performance?
Well, I'm just foxy in general. No, it's interesting because, I watched a lot of videos of foxes, especially Fennec foxes. And, there's a slinkiness to their walk, and they're loners and they listen, the Fennec fox has huge ears. So they're very, very alert and aware. And another thing that I attribute is that like Fennec can read people, or she thought she could read people really well, except for that one time with Toro. But he has no scruples. That's why. That's a whole other thing. But for the voice, I wanted to kind of give a little bit of that quality of her. So there's like a sort of a more elongated, slinky rhythm that came from the fox. And so when she talks, there's a little bit of an exaggeration and a stretching of words here and there, and whenever she does speak, it's there's a pointed reason for it.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of got into it right there because my natural voice is much higher.
David from Endor Express asked, given that she was in season 1 just for one episode, but now she's in Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian, and The Bad Batch, did she know all along that she was going to be so heavily involved?
No, as a matter of fact, I had no idea, but boy, am I happy that it happened the way it's happened. When Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, offered me this role, I was really, really excited because my entire life has been trying to manifest this moment where I got to participate and be part of a Star Wars project. But then when I read the script and she dies at the end, I was just like, oh, that's kind of sad. So I wasn't sure, but then, you just realize, hey, this might be the only opportunity for me to participate. So I got to check this off my bucket list. And of course, talking to John and Dave, it's like, 3 people talking the same language because we all love Star Wars so much and are really knowledgeable about it. So I took the job. Dave directed, and we got to know each other better and discovered that we both grew up in the same town and went to the same high school. So I might have used that as a little bit of edge to try to guilt him into keeping Fennec alive. But I'm really hoping that it's between them loving the character and what I brought to it, as well as the fans' reaction to the character when the episode aired, that, that all this other stuff transpired. So, but I'm so grateful. So happy.
We are too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
George Bates asked, given that Fennec is now a fan favourite in live action and animation, is there another medium in which you'd like to see Fennec appear?
Anything. Anything at all. Bring back the holiday special, whatever. I'm excited about any venture into this universe. Of course, if I got to participate in a cinematic release of a film in the future, that would pretty much make me pee in my pants. But anything. I'm just excited to see the dolls and the toys that's going to come out. Like I hear that one of the Black series is coming out, and I've collected Star Wars toys since I was little, so this is insane. It's just unbelievable.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Teresa Delgado asked, what does it mean to Ming-Na to be an Asian American in Star Wars and represent her community?
It's always great, it's kind of funny. Jimmy O Yang says, well, it's not really by choice that I'm representing. It's just when you're born looking Asian, it's just going to be an automatic thing. So for me, I'm just grateful that there's been more characters that's been incorporated. We have green aliens, blue aliens, and what was lacking early on were Asian characters. And now there's been so many in Rogue One, Donnie Yen and oh my goodness, the other actor, I'm blanking on his name. I'm going to have to look it up. I'm so sorry. I've been doing this all day, so I'm really tired right now. But it's great, and I wrap even Temuera as part of this expansive Asian blanket. I think it's wonderful, and I'm so thankful that the fans like her, and because as a big Star Wars fan myself, it's a gift. So I'm grateful, and I hope that this sort of success story will only encourage them to want to create more Asian characters. And they're not specifically Asian. It's just, have us there repping.
Next up, William Devereaux asked, how does Ming-Na see the dynamic between Fennec and Omega?
That is very interesting, William, because I feel like with Fennec, especially young Fennec, she is good at reading people, manipulating, and playing a certain quality to invite herself into that particular person's trust. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how sincere and genuine her care for Omega is, or if just she sees her as a bounty and a gig that she had to fulfill. So that's really interesting. I appreciate that you think, that there is this side of her. I'd like to think there is also a quality and a side to her that she connected with Omega in a certain way. But we'll see.
This is Steve Bloom, voice of Zeb Aurelius, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Caravast. May the force be with you.
Next up, I had a chance to put my question to Ming-Na Wen.
Hi there. My question's kind of been asked already, so I'll pivot slightly. Fennec of the Bad Batch era and Fennec of the Mando era, do you consider them, obviously it's the same person, but do you play them as the same character, given that there's a lot of living to happen between the two iterations of Fennec? Do you play them as the same person, or are you kind of delineating between the two at this point?
Well, I kind of draw from my own, this is what, as actors, we have to really draw from ourselves and infuse some of our own life experiences and soul to a character to bring them to life. And I know that the 22-year-old me is very different from, me now. But at the same time, I'm still that geek nerd girl that every time I get on a new set and I see new toys and the Star Wars characters, I geek out and freak out like I would if I was a teenager. So those are the elements that I try to bring into the younger Fennec. There is definitely less experience, more ambition, more of a drive to prove who she is and make her mark in the world. So I think her energy and her focus and her tactics might be a little bit more raw and different. And I give her a slightly, like a very slight little pitch change, but not too much, because the difference between her and a seasoned Fennec is in the energy.
Brian Young asked what sparked Ming-Na's fandom and how has it evolved now that she's so heavily involved in at least 3 shows?
Oh, wow. I grew up, I came to the United States when I was younger and I had to learn English and in 3rd grade. And I think for me, science fiction and fantasy was always like a great form of escapism. And so I was already a fan of that genre. But when Star Wars came out, I had no idea what it was. We didn't have social media back then. You just kind of hear word of mouth that, there's another great movie out and everybody was kind of crazy about it. The experience I felt, from the moment the music came on and the scrolling of the story and then that, the big Imperial cruiser going over our heads, as a young kid, you're just like, it's endless. It just went on forever. And I just knew I was in for an amazing adventure. And the connection I felt with, especially Luke Skywalker at the time, when he looked at the binary sunset. And I think this might be for all of us. That one moment, it's like 30 seconds of celluloid, but with the music and him staring out there, thinking about, will I ever fulfill my dreams? Will I ever be who I want to become? That was me. I totally understood that, being a kid stuck in Pittsburgh. I mean, not that I was stuck, but I felt stuck, and wanting and dreaming about being an actor, and being Asian and being a woman and knowing the obstacles ahead of me. So I think it was just all of that. I mean, it became a religious experience, the whole thing. And I'm sure for you guys too, on many levels. Oh, and then when I got on the set of The Mandalorian and that volume lit up and it was Tatooine with the binary sunset, oh, you should have seen how much I freaked out. I cried. I literally cried. I was so happy. And then I had the AD take a picture of me looking at the binary sunset. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Next up, James Bainey asked, what should we as fans take from Fennec's appearance in The Bad Batch as we head into the Book of Boba Fett this December?
Well, I mean, to really see, when we would see bounty hunters, most of them were either male or alien, nondescript in that way, and or in uniform, or I think it's kind of cool to see sort of this young civilian female bounty hunter who's able to kind of keep up, if not be feared by the others, and making a mark for herself. I think it's a great role model in many ways, for women, even though she's an assassin. I know. Okay. That's a technicality. But, I love roles like that where she's sort of an outsider and yet she makes up her own rules, and she doesn't, she believes in herself. She believes in what she's capable of doing, and she's fearless in pursuing her goals.
Hello, I'm Warwick Davis, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Dan Z from Coffee with Kenobi asked, regarding her acting process of live action versus animation, what's the difference?
Right. Well, I do a lot of voice acting. Like right now, I'm doing like 4 or 5 other animation projects. So the one thing that's difficult is like keeping all the characters straight in ways, because sometimes you literally go in and you're shooting, 4 or 5 episodes all at once because they're just only doing your lines. And so that's difficult and different in wanting to bring something to life, and you have to do it very, very quickly. With live action, you have other actors to work off of. You have a set or sceneries. You have a director to help you, producers, writers. You have costume, makeup, hair. It's a full-on process. When you do voice acting, you could be in your PJs, and in fact, with the Bad Batch, because of COVID, they brought in all this equipment, the computer, they delivered it all, the microphone, everything, and I had to set it up in my home. And the only place that I found to be really good for sound buffering was in my closet because of all the clothes. So I did the season of Bad Batch in my closet. So can you imagine, you have to like create this whole, like bring this character to life with your imagination while you're surrounded by your clothes. It's pretty crazy.
James from Jedi News showed Ming-Na the forthcoming Lego Fennec Shan figure, and Ming-Na then went on to describe and discuss how it feels to be on set being such a fan.
I'm gaga over all of this. Every day I go on set, I'm just, it takes me a little bit to like focus and work and be a professional actor, because, I'm always having like these little moments of nerdgasms where I'm flipping out. And Temuera, bless him, he's less, he's more even keel. So we're really good balance for each other. So when we were doing the Book of Boba Fett, yeah, he definitely kept me calm.
Ming-Na was then asked how it feels to see action figures made based on her and how it must feel to be able to collect them.
It's ridiculous. I think I'm going to have to work harder because I'll be spending a lot of money.
Thanks for tuning into this very late, unexpected, but hopefully not unwelcome episode of Making Tracks. If you want to be part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fantha Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Questions always very welcome. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds @FanthaTracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fantha Tracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Fantha Tracks will be back with Good Morning Tatooine this coming Sunday, live 9 o'clock UK time, 4 PM Eastern, 1 PM Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. And Making Tracks will be back next Tuesday with our regular 97th studio episode. So we'll see you then.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.